The Galactic Council's meeting. In the heart of an expansive star system, where countless civilizations intermingled, the Galactic Council convened in its grand chamber. This vast hall was adorned with luminescent panels that flickered in hues of blue and green, casting an ethereal glow on the representatives seated high above in their respective alcoves. Each member was a testament to their species' unique evolution, a mix of curiosity and skepticism etched across their features. The council had gathered to discuss a series of uncharted signals emerging from the fringes of human territory, a development that had sparked intrigue yet was met with disbelief by many. As whispers circulated among the members, one figure stood out. Counselor Arate, an elder from the Zoreth sector, adjusted his ornate robe and cleared his throat. "They're calling it the Supernova fleet," he began, his voice resonating through the chamber, drawing attention away from side conversations. "Rumors are circulating that the Terran species, humans, have developed a new type of warship." A ripple of laughter echoed from a corner where a council member from the Cordon sector sat, barely able to contain his mirth. "We're talking about a species that only recently mastered interstellar travel. Warships of any significant caliber would be beyond their capacity." His laughter was infectious, prompting chuckles from others who shared his skepticism. But not all were convinced. One member remained notably silent. Counselor Drix, an alien diplomat who had once served in Terran space. He had witnessed humanity's unorthodox methods firsthand, their tenacity when cornered, and their uncanny knack for innovation. "They are unpredictable," Drix finally spoke, his tone measured yet firm. "They've adapted technologies beyond our understanding before. Perhaps these supernova ships deserve closer scrutiny." "Ridiculous," another member sneered dismissively. "Even their strongest fleets are laughable compared to ours. A scouting mission will settle this matter quickly." Despite the dismissive remarks, an undercurrent of tension lingered in the air, unspoken concerns that gnawed at some members' confidence. After much debate, the council ultimately agreed on a scouting mission, minimal risk with just a handful of ships equipped to gather data and return swiftly with information. Hours later, the scouting fleet departed, slipping through the expanse of space toward human territory. As they approached the edge of Terran space, silence descended upon them, a palpable hush enveloping their vessels as they activated sensors to scan for any sign of this fabled supernova fleet. The readings began to take form on their screens, and a chill passed through the crew. They had expected primitive vessels, perhaps basic plasma cannons or early shield technology. But what materialized before them was nothing short of bewildering. Before them floated ships that glowed with an eerie pulsing light, as though each vessel held a miniature sun within its hull. Their designs were not conventional. They seemed organic, alive, with faint energy fields surrounding each one that scrambled their readings. "Are you seeing this?" one scout whispered, his voice trembling in disbelief as he stared at his console. Back in the council's grand chamber, live feeds from the scouts blinked into existence, relaying images of this astonishing Terran fleet. Counselors leaned forward in their seats, some with narrowed eyes, while others wore expressions of sheer disbelief. The humans had cloaked their ships in energy fields that disrupted scanning attempts. It was as if each Terran vessel projected a kind of controlled radiation that pulsed and flared unpredictably. "Impossible," one counselor muttered under his breath. "Our technology would never allow such interference." As concern mounted within the scouting fleet, subtle system glitches began to manifest, communications faltering, controls lagging, as if something inherent in this human fleet disrupted even their most basic functions. "We need a response," ordered the fleet captain, attempting to maintain control amid rising panic. He transmitted a standard hail. "This is the Galactic Council Scout Fleet. State your purpose and intentions." Silence answered him, a silence that grew more unnerving with every passing second. A junior officer leaned over muttering, "Are they even manned or automated?" Before they could contemplate this question further, something extraordinary happened. Every Terran ship responded, not through words but through synchronized movement. Each vessel turned slightly, aligning perfectly with the scout fleet, as if tracking every individual ship with pinpoint precision. Panic surged through the scouts. They scrambled for options while observing how effortlessly these human vessels held formation, a silent reminder that they were being watched and perhaps toyed with. Back in the council chamber, unease settled among its members as they watched this unfolding drama. The Tan Fleet's passive stance was unnerving. Silence filled every corner, punctuated only by anxious murmurs echoing throughout the hall. Finally, one counselor broke through this tension. "These ships, they're waiting," she whispered. This revelation sent shivers down spines. The council members exchanged uneasy glances as smug dismissals transformed into something colder and darker. They were no longer discussing primitive humans. They were facing a fleet capable of disrupting communications while projecting an impenetrable energy barrier. The scouting fleet's captain sensed impending dread clouding his judgment. He issued an order to retreat but realized too late that every possible escape route had been blocked by calculated maneuvers executed by these Terran ships. "What do they want?" an officer murmured nervously. The captain's gaze remained locked on this formidable human fleet, his voice barely above a whisper as he spoke to himself. "They want us to see, to understand." As fear gripped them all aboard those scout ships, it became abundantly clear. Humanity had revealed its hand, not just technologically advanced vessels, but an entirely new form of warfare that combined strategy with psychological dominance over its adversaries. And so began humanity's ascent into galactic prominence, a shift that would alter not only their fate, but also that of countless civilizations across stars yet unknown. The scouting mission. As the Galactic Council's deliberations faded into the background, the scouting fleet ventured deeper into human space, navigating through the vast expanse of stars that had once seemed so distant and foreign. The atmosphere aboard the lead ship, the Vanguard, was thick with tension, each crew member acutely aware of the gravity of their mission. They were tasked with gathering intelligence on a species that had, until recently, been underestimated by most galactic civilizations. Now they faced an unknown threat. The Supernova fleet. Setting off. The fleet comprised 5 ships, each equipped with advanced sensors and cloaking technology designed to minimize detection. Captain Ilara Voss stood at the helm of the Vanguard, her eyes scanning the starfield ahead. She had trained for years to command this mission, but nothing could prepare her for the unsettling silence that enveloped them as they crossed into human territory. "Status report," she ordered, her voice steady despite the unease gnawing at her insides. "Initial scans show no immediate threats," replied Lieutenant Cade, his fingers dancing over the controls. "But we're picking up some strange energy readings, nothing we've encountered before." Ilara nodded, her brow furrowing. "Can you isolate it?" "Trying now," Cade said, his focus sharpening as he adjusted the sensors. The ship's displays flickered momentarily before stabilizing, revealing a series of pulsing lights scattered across their screens. "Those readings are off the charts," Cade muttered, eyes widening. "It's as if they're generating their own gravitational fields." "What does that mean?" Ilara asked, leaning closer to the console. "It could mean they're using some form of advanced propulsion or energy manipulation," he replied, glancing at her. "But it's too erratic to pinpoint." The crew exchanged anxious glances. They were entering uncharted territory, where even their most sophisticated technology struggled to keep pace. Initial observations. As they pressed forward, the Vanguard and its sister ships began to detect more anomalies, strange fluctuations in spacetime that caused minor distortions in their navigation systems. The crew felt a growing sense of dread. Every flicker on their screens hinted at something far more powerful than they had anticipated. "Captain," came a voice from the communications officer, Ensign Mira. "We're receiving a transmission, an automated message from a nearby sector." Ilara straightened, her heart racing. "Put it through." The screen lit up with static before stabilizing into a clear image, a human ship drifting silently against a backdrop of stars. The vessel was sleek and formidable, adorned with intricate designs that seemed almost organic. "This is a warning," a voice echoed through the chamber, calm yet commanding. "You are entering restricted space. Turn back now or face consequences." Ilara felt a chill run down her spine. There was no mistaking the authority in that voice. "What do you make of it?" she asked Cade. "It's an ultimatum," he replied grimly. "They're not asking us to leave. They're telling us. Discovery of Supernova-Class ships. Ignoring the warning would be reckless, yet curiosity compelled them to investigate further. They adjusted their course toward the source of those strange energy readings, hoping to glean more about this supernova fleet that had sparked such heated debate back at the Council. As they approached what appeared to be a cluster of vessels, Ilara's breath caught in her throat. Before them floated ships unlike any she had ever seen. Massive constructs radiating an almost hypnotic glow. Each ship shimmered with an aura of energy that pulsed rhythmically, as if alive. "By the stars," Cade breathed, his eyes wide with awe and fear. "What are those?" Ilara whispered, unable to tear her gaze away from the spectacle. "They must be Supernova-Class ships," Cade replied incredulously. "But how? This technology is far beyond anything we've encountered." Ilara's mind raced as she considered their options. They could turn back now and report what they'd seen, or risk everything by getting closer for a better look. The decision weighed heavily on her conscience. "Prepare for close-range scans," she ordered finally. "We need data on these ships." Eerie silence. As they maneuvered closer, an eerie silence enveloped them. Even their ship's engines seemed muted against the backdrop of these majestic vessels. The glowing ships remained still, observing with an unsettling calmness that made Ilara's skin crawl. "Captain," Mira reported nervously, "I'm detecting fluctuations in our systems. Navigation is becoming erratic." "What do you mean?" Ilara asked sharply. "It's like something is interfering with our systems," Mira stammered. "I can't get a lock on any of their ships." Panic surged through the crew as lights flickered ominously across consoles. Alarms blared in protest as systems began to fail one by one. "We need to retreat," Cade shouted over the din. "No," Ilara snapped back, her resolve hardening. "We can't leave without understanding what we're dealing with." Communication attempts. Desperation clawed at Ilara as she attempted to establish communication with the human fleet once more. "This is Captain Ilara Voss of the Vanguard. We mean no harm and seek only information about your fleet." Silence answered her, a silence that felt heavy and suffocating. "Try again," she urged Mira. "We need to establish contact." Mira nodded frantically and sent another message into the void. "This is an official communication from the Galactic Council. We request your identification and intentions." Still nothing but silence met them. A silence so profound it felt like an unspoken threat hanging in the air. Suddenly, without warning, every human ship shifted slightly, an imperceptible movement yet perfectly synchronized, as if responding to an unseen command. "Captain," Cade exclaimed as he watched in disbelief. "They're tracking us." Ilara's heart raced. This was no ordinary encounter. They were being observed and assessed by a fleet that exuded power without uttering a single word. Realization of power. In that moment of realization, Ilara understood. These humans were not merely defending their territory. They were demonstrating something much more profound, a mastery over technology and strategy that transcended conventional warfare. "We need to get out of here," Cade urged again, as alarms continued blaring around them. But just as Ilara prepared to issue a retreat order, another message crackled through their comms, a single phrase that sent chills down her spine. "Leave our territory." The words echoed ominously within the Vanguard, resonating like an unspoken promise laden with menace. Ilara exchanged glances with her crew. Fear was etched across every face as they processed what this meant. Humanity had revealed its hand, Not just advanced technology, but an entire doctrine of warfare based on psychological dominance rather than brute force. With mounting dread and uncertainty clouding her judgment, Ilara made her decision. They would retreat, but not without first gathering whatever data they could about these extraordinary vessels before leaving human space behind them forever. The encounter. The tension aboard the Vanguard reached a breaking point as the scouting fleet struggled to comprehend the implications of their encounter with the Supernova fleet. Captain Ilara Voss stood at the helm, her mind racing with thoughts of strategy and survival. The human vessels, silent and imposing, had demonstrated a power that was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. The standoff. Ilara gathered her crew in the command center, where the atmosphere was thick with anxiety. "We need to assess our options," she said, her voice steady despite the turmoil within. "We've seen what they're capable of. We can't underestimate them any longer." Cade, her trusted lieutenant, nodded in agreement. "We need to get back to the Council with as much data as we can gather. They need to understand the gravity of this situation. But how do we gather data without provoking them?" Mira, the communications officer, asked, her voice trembling slightly. "They've made it clear they don't want us here." Ilara took a deep breath, weighing their choices carefully. "We'll attempt one more communication. If they refuse to respond, we'll have no choice but to retreat." As she prepared to transmit another message, a sudden flicker on the sensors caught her attention. "What's happening?" she demanded. "Energy readings are spiking from the human fleet," Cade exclaimed, his fingers flying over the controls. "They're powering up." A chilling ultimatum. Before Ilara could react, a voice crackled through their comms, a calm yet chilling tone that sent shivers down her spine. "You are still within our territory. You have been warned." The message reverberated through the ship, each word laced with an unmistakable threat. Ilara felt her heart race. This was not just a warning. It was a declaration of intent. "Captain, they're moving," Cade shouted as the human ships began to shift position, forming a tighter perimeter around the Vanguard and its sister vessels. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers," Ilara ordered, adrenaline surging through her veins. The crew sprang into action as she activated defensive systems. But just as quickly as they had moved, the human ships halted, each vessel aligning perfectly in formation once more. It was a display of control that left Ilara breathless. "They're demonstrating their capabilities without attacking," Cade observed, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's a show of force." The human fleet's response. As tension mounted, Ilara attempted one last desperate communication. "This is Captain Ilara Voss of the Vanguard. We are leaving your territory immediately. We mean no harm." Silence hung in the air for several agonizing moments before the human response came. A single phrase transmitted directly into their system. "Leave now." Ilara's heart sank at the cold finality of those words. There was no room for negotiation or diplomacy. It was a stark ultimatum that left them no choice but to comply. "Captain," Mira said urgently, "we need to move before they decide to take action." Ilara nodded sharply. "All ships, prepare for immediate retreat. Engage engines on my mark." As they began to pull away from the human fleet, Ilara couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, every movement scrutinized by those imposing vessels that loomed like shadows in the void. The retreat. With every passing second, the Vanguard increased its distance from the Supernova fleet. The crew worked in silence, each person acutely aware of how close they had come to disaster. As they crossed back into neutral space, Ilara felt a wave of relief wash over her, but it was short-lived. The reality of their encounter weighed heavily on her mind. They had witnessed humanity's power firsthand and returned with more questions than answers. "Captain," Cade said hesitantly as he reviewed their data logs, "we need to analyze what we've gathered and prepare for our report to the Council." Ilara nodded grimly. "We must convey everything we've seen. The technology, their tactics, everything." As they navigated back toward Galactic Council territory, Ilara couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of something much larger, a shift in power dynamics that would reverberate throughout the galaxy. Return to Council. Upon reaching Council space, the Vanguard docked amidst an atmosphere charged with anticipation. The crew disembarked quickly and made their way to the Grand Chamber, where high-ranking councilors awaited their report. Ilara stepped forward as all eyes turned toward her. A mixture of curiosity and skepticism etched across their faces. She took a deep breath before addressing them. "We encountered the supernova fleet," she began, her voice steady, despite the weight of what she had to say. "What we witnessed was unlike anything we have ever seen." Councillor Drix leaned forward intently. He had warned them about humanity's potential before this mission even began. "What did you find?" Revelations unfold. Ilara recounted their experience, the eerie silence of the human ships, their advanced energy manipulation technologies, and how they had effectively neutralized their systems without direct confrontation. "They didn't fire a single shot," she concluded somberly. "But their display of power was clear. They can destroy us if provoked." A murmur swept through the chamber as councilors exchanged uneasy glances. Disbelief mixed with concern painted across their features. "What did they say?" demanded one councilor impatiently. "They issued a warning," Ilara replied firmly. "They stated, 'Leave our territory.'" The room fell silent as each member processed this information, an ultimatum that carried heavy implications for all civilizations within Galactic Council jurisdiction. Debating their next steps. "What do we do now?" another councilor asked hesitantly. "We must reassess our approach toward humanity," Drix interjected thoughtfully. "They have shown us restraint, but also an undeniable strength." Some councilors argued for immediate retaliation, an assertion of dominance in response to what they perceived as an affront, but others cautioned against provoking a species capable of wielding such destructive power. "We cannot afford to underestimate them any longer," Drix warned again. "Their technology is advancing at an alarming rate. We must adapt or risk being left behind." As tensions rose within the chamber and debates intensified over how best to respond to humanity's warning and capabilities, it became increasingly clear. Everything had changed since their encounter with the supernova fleet. Part 4. Return to the Council. In the aftermath of their harrowing encounter with humanity's supernova fleet, Captain Ilara Voss stood at the forefront of an urgent assembly within the Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council. The air crackled with tension as representatives from various species gathered, each one eager yet apprehensive about what revelations would unfold regarding humanity's newfound prowess. Urgent summons. Ilara took her place at a central podium, while high-ranking councilors settled into their seats around her. A mix of anticipation and skepticism etched across their faces. The chamber buzzed with whispers as she prepared herself for what lay ahead. This was not merely another report, it was an awakening. "Esteemed members of the Galactic Council," she began solemnly, capturing everyone's attention immediately. "I stand before you today, not just as captain, but as a witness to something unprecedented, the emergence of humanity's supernova fleet." A ripple of intrigue coursed through those present. Some leaned forward eagerly while others exchanged wary glances, doubt still lingering among certain factions who clung tightly to old perceptions about humans being primitive compared to more advanced civilizations. Recounting their experience, Ilara proceeded methodically through every detail. The eerie silence surrounding those colossal ships that glimmered like distant stars against an endless void. How each vessel radiated an energy that felt almost sentient, alive in ways beyond comprehension. "We attempted communication multiple times," she continued passionately, "but each time met only with silence or warnings that echoed through our systems, a stark reminder that we were intruders in their space." As she spoke about how humanity had displayed its technological superiority without resorting to aggression or violence, a calculated show of dominance rather than brute force, the atmosphere shifted palpably within the chamber. Councillor Drix listened intently, He had been one of few voices advocating for caution regarding humanity from early on during discussions about potential threats posed by this unpredictable species. They are not merely defending themselves, he interjected thoughtfully after Ilara concluded recounting their experience. They are asserting control over territories long deemed neutral or belonging solely to us. Council's reaction. Murmurs erupted among council members, some expressing disbelief, while others voiced concerns about how best to proceed given this new reality, where humans wielded power previously thought reserved only for established empires capable of interstellar warfare on grand scales. "What do you propose we do?" asked one particularly anxious counselor, whose species had historically prioritized military might above all else, his brow furrowed deeply in contemplation over potential ramifications stemming from this encounter. "We must engage diplomatically," Drix urged firmly but calmly amidst rising tensions surrounding him, a voice advocating for reason rather than rash decisions fueled by fear or anger towards humanity's actions thus far. "But how can we trust them?" Another counselor countered vehemently, his skepticism palpable throughout every word spoken aloud within these hallowed walls, filled with authority and influence over countless worlds across galaxies far beyond reach. Strategic considerations. Ilara raised her hand slightly in an attempt at calming emotions swirling around like storm clouds threatening rain upon parched earth below. She needed clarity amidst chaos if any progress were ever going to be made moving forward together toward mutual understanding, rather than conflict driven by misunderstanding. "We must gather more intelligence about what lies ahead before making any decisions regarding future interactions," she suggested thoughtfully. Her voice steadied, despite mounting pressure weighing heavily upon shoulders already burdened by uncertainty looming large overhead. A momentary silence fell across all present, while deliberations continued behind closed doors, until finally consensus emerged among those gathered. Further reconnaissance missions would be necessary alongside diplomatic overtures aimed directly toward establishing lines of communication between both factions moving forward. A new approach. "Perhaps we should consider sending envoys instead," proposed one particularly astute counselor whose species specialized in negotiation tactics rather than outright warfare, his eyes gleaming brightly beneath shimmering lights illuminating chamber around them. "That could work," Cabe chimed in enthusiastically from his position nearby where he'd been observing discussions unfold closely alongside other crew members who'd accompanied Ilara back home after harrowing journey undertaken earlier today. "Yes," Drix agreed wholeheartedly, now feeling emboldened by newfound hope emerging amidst chaos surrounding them all. "Let us extend an olive branch rather than threaten them further. We must show willingness and engage cooperatively rather than confrontationally." With renewed determination fueling spirits within chamber filled once again laughter echoed throughout halls, where once doubt reigned supreme. It seemed possible now that perhaps peace could be achieved if only both sides were willing to take risks necessary forge bonds built upon trust, instead animosity-born ignorance. Preparing for diplomacy. Plans began taking shape rapidly following consensus reached earlier today. Teams formed tasked gathering intelligence, while others focused crafting proposals outlining terms future negotiations aimed directly toward establishing lasting relationships between two vastly different civilizations sharing same galaxy together. Council members dispersed quickly after final decisions made, leaving behind echoes, laughter mingling, hope filling air around them. It felt lighter somehow knowing brighter days lay ahead if only everyone committed working together toward common goals, shared equally amongst all parties involved regardless past grievances held tightly onto tightly. As preparations unfolded behind scenes preparing groundwork necessary facilitate successful diplomatic overtures, initiated soon thereafter excitement grew palpable among crew members aboard the Vanguard, who'd experienced first-hand dangers lurking just beyond borders once thought safe now transformed entirely new landscape, filled uncertainty ripe opportunity awaiting discovery waiting patiently beneath surface ready emerge whenever called upon next time around. With these developments unfolding rapidly before eyes turned toward future possibilities awaiting exploration ahead together united purpose, forging bonds stronger than ever imagined possible before now. Humanity's ultimatum. As the Galactic Council digested the implications of the supernova fleet's demonstration, a palpable shift occurred within the chamber. The atmosphere, once filled with skepticism and bravado, now crackled with a mix of fear and respect. The message from the human fleet had been clear. They were not to be trifled with, and their power was beyond anything the Council had previously imagined. The aftermath of the demonstration. In the wake of the awe-inspiring display, Council members exchanged glances filled with uncertainty. The asteroid's obliteration had left an indelible mark on their collective psyche, a vivid reminder that humanity possessed not just advanced technology, but also a strategic mindset that could leverage such power without resorting to violence. Did we truly underestimate them? Murmured Counselor Erin, his voice barely above a whisper. What kind of civilization can harness the energy of a star? It seems we have much to learn, Drix replied, his tone reflective. Their restraint is as telling as their capabilities. They chose to demonstrate their strength, rather than engage in outright warfare. The Council's leader, a seasoned diplomat named Elder Theric, cleared his throat to regain order amidst the rising tide of anxiety. We must consider our next steps carefully, he said, his voice steady yet tinged with urgency. Humanity has made its position clear. We cannot afford to provoke them further. Debating diplomatic approaches. As discussions resumed, various factions within the Council began to voice their opinions on how best to approach this new reality. Some members advocated for immediate diplomatic overtures, suggesting that they extend an olive branch to humanity in hopes of establishing a mutually beneficial relationship. We should send envoys, proposed Counselor Mira, her eyes alight with determination. If we can demonstrate goodwill and respect for their boundaries, perhaps we can forge an alliance rather than face potential annihilation. Others were less convinced. An alliance? With a species that has just demonstrated its willingness to use such destructive force, countered Counselor Varick, his brow furrowed in skepticism. We would be fools to trust them. But what choice do we have? Drix interjected, his voice rising above the din. If we continue down this path of confrontation, we risk losing everything. We must adapt or be swept away by forces beyond our control. Elder Theric listened intently as voices rose and fell around him like waves crashing against a shore. He understood the gravity of their situation. Humanity was no longer a fledgling species struggling for recognition. They had emerged as a formidable power in their own right. A shift in perspective. As debates continued, Theric reflected on the broader implications of humanity's rise. The galaxy had long been dominated by established civilizations that wielded technology and influence like weapons. Now, a new player had entered the arena, one that operated under different rules. Perhaps it is time for us to reconsider our place in this galaxy, he said finally, drawing silence from the assembly. Humanity's emergence could be an opportunity for growth, rather than a threat to our existence. The room buzzed with murmurs as council members processed his words. Could it be possible that humanity's strength might serve as a catalyst for change? A chance to redefine alliances and reshape power dynamics across the stars. Crafting a message. With consensus slowly forming around the idea of diplomacy, Theric called for calm and focus. We need to craft a message that conveys our respect for their boundaries, while expressing our desire for peaceful coexistence, he instructed his advisors. Counselor Mira stepped forward eagerly, her mind racing with possibilities. We should emphasize our willingness to learn from them, to share knowledge and technology in ways that benefit both parties. And we must acknowledge their strength, Drix added thoughtfully. It's crucial that they understand we do not seek confrontation, but rather collaboration. As they worked together to draft a message that would encapsulate these sentiments, hope began to blossom within the chamber, a fragile yet vital spark that could lead them toward a new era of interstellar relations. Sending the envoys. Days later, preparations were complete for sending an envoy to humanity, a small delegation composed of respected diplomats and scientists tasked with initiating dialogue. As they boarded their ship, Elder Theric felt a mixture of apprehension and optimism. This was uncharted territory for all involved. "Remember," he addressed his team before departure, "we are ambassadors of peace. Approach them with humility and respect. Let them see our genuine desire for understanding." As the Horizon launched into space toward human territory, Theric reflected on how far they had come. From dismissing humanity as insignificant to recognizing them as equals worthy of respect. The arrival. Upon entering human space, the Horizon approached cautiously, aware of the potential dangers lurking within this unfamiliar territory. The crew monitored their systems closely as they transmitted their identification codes, hoping for safe passage through the vast expanse populated by Supernova-Class ships. Receiving response, reported Ensign Lyra from her station at Communications. "They're acknowledging our presence but have requested we remain at a safe distance until further instructions are provided." Theric nodded solemnly. It was clear that humanity maintained its cautious approach even in light of diplomatic overtures. "Maintain our position," he ordered firmly. "Let's not provoke them further." A cautious welcome. After what felt like an eternity waiting in silence, a transmission finally came through. A holographic image materialized before them depicting an imposing figure clad in sleek armor adorned with insignia representing humanity's fleet. "I am Admiral Kellen," he stated firmly, but without hostility. "You have entered restricted space under our jurisdiction." Elder Theric took a deep breath before responding. This was his moment to convey their intentions clearly and respectfully. "Admiral Kellen," he began earnestly, "we come bearing no weapons nor threats, only an offer of peace and cooperation between our peoples." Kellen regarded him with an unreadable expression before replying cautiously, "Your intentions will be taken into consideration. But know this, any sign of aggression will be met with swift consequences." Theric felt tension rise again at those words, but maintained his composure. "We understand your position completely, and wish only to establish dialogue moving forward." Finding common ground. Over subsequent hours filled with discussions between both parties aboard the Horizon, barriers began slowly breaking down as they explored shared interests, scientific advancements in energy manipulation being one focal point where both civilizations could learn from each other's strengths. As conversations deepened over days spent together exchanging ideas about technology and culture alike, an unexpected camaraderie began blossoming between humans and council members alike, an acknowledgement that perhaps they were not so different after all despite vast differences separating them across galaxies. A new era begins. At last came time for parting. Elder Theric stood before Admiral Kellen once more, this time feeling lighter than when first arriving here among humans who'd once seemed so foreign yet now felt like allies forged through mutual respect. "We look forward to future collaborations," Kellen said, sincerely extending his hand toward Theric, a gesture symbolizing newfound trust between two worlds previously at odds now united under shared goals. As the Horizon departed human space, returning homeward bound toward Galactic Council headquarters, Elder Theric reflected upon how far they'd come since first encountering Supernova-Class ships. No longer adversaries, but partners embarking on journeys together toward brighter futures ahead. And thus began an era marked by cooperation rather than conflict, a testament proving even amidst uncertainty hope could flourish when understanding bridged gaps, once thought insurmountable. Consequences of underestimation. The Galactic Council sat in stunned silence, the weight of humanity's demonstration pressing heavily upon them. The flickering screens that had displayed the obliteration of the asteroid now faded into darkness, leaving behind a palpable tension that filled the grand chamber. Council members exchanged uneasy glances, their minds racing with the implications of what they had just witnessed. A shift in power dynamics. Elder Theric, the council leader, took a moment to collect his thoughts before addressing the assembly. "We have underestimated humanity's capabilities," he began, his voice steady but laced with concern. "What we saw today was not just a display of power, it was a clear message that they are not to be trifled with." Counselor Varric, who had initially advocated for a more aggressive stance against humanity, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. But how do we respond to this? We cannot simply allow them to dictate terms to us. But we must also recognize the reality of our situation. Trix interjected, his tone measured. Humanity has demonstrated that they possess technology far beyond what we previously believed. To challenge them now would be folly. The council chamber buzzed with murmurs as members grappled with the new reality. The balance of power had shifted dramatically. Humanity was no longer a fledgling species struggling for recognition. They were now a formidable force capable of reshaping the galaxy's political landscape, strategizing for the future. As discussions continued, it became clear that a consensus was forming among the more cautious members of the council. They had recognized that diplomacy was their best option moving forward. "We must extend an olive branch," Counselor Mira proposed earnestly. "If we can demonstrate our willingness to coexist peacefully, perhaps we can avoid further conflict." Elder Theric nodded in agreement. "We need to send a delegation to humanity, one that conveys our respect for their power and our desire for cooperation." "But how can we ensure they will accept us?" Varric countered skeptically. "After what just happened, they may view us as a threat." Trix spoke up again, his voice calm and reassuring. "It is imperative that we approach them with humility and transparency. We must acknowledge their strength while expressing our genuine desire for collaboration." With this new strategy taking shape, the Council began drafting a message to humanity, one that would convey their respect and willingness to engage diplomatically. The message to humanity. Days later, after much deliberation and preparation, the Council sent out its carefully crafted message, transmitted directly into human space. The delegation included Elder Theric himself, along with several respected diplomats and scientists who specialized in interspecies relations. As they awaited a response, tension hung in the air aboard the Horizon, their diplomatic vessel. Theric paced the deck, contemplating the potential outcomes of this encounter. "Whatever happens next will define our future," he mused aloud to his advisors. "We must be prepared for any response, be it positive or negative." Hours turned into days as they waited for any sign from humanity. Finally, just as hope began to wane, a transmission came through. A holographic image materialized before them depicting Admiral Kellen once more. "Elder Theric." Kellen greeted them with a nod, his demeanor serious but not hostile. "Your message has been received and considered." Theric felt a wave of relief wash over him. This was an opportunity to establish dialogue. A cautious dialogue. "Admiral Kellen." Theric replied respectfully, "We come seeking cooperation and understanding between our peoples. We recognize your strength and wish to explore ways in which we can coexist peacefully." Kellen regarded him thoughtfully before responding. "Your acknowledgement of our capabilities is noted. However, understand this: any further encroachment into our territory will not be tolerated." Theric nodded solemnly. "We understand completely and wish only to respect your boundaries moving forward." As discussions progressed, both parties began exploring potential areas of collaboration. Scientific advancements in energy manipulation and space exploration were at the forefront of their conversations. "We have much to learn from each other," Kellen stated firmly. "Our technologies could complement one another in ways that benefit both species." Theric felt hope begin to blossom within him. Perhaps this was the beginning of a new era, one where cooperation replaced conflict. Building bridges. Over subsequent weeks, regular communications were established between the Galactic Council and humanity's leadership. Joint research initiatives were proposed, focusing on harnessing energy from stars, a field where both civilizations could learn from each other's strengths. As trust began to grow between them, Elder Theric organized an exchange program where scientists from both sides would collaborate on various projects aimed at advancing technology while fostering mutual respect. "I believe this is just the start," he remarked during one meeting with Kellen. "Together, we can achieve great things, things that neither of us could accomplish alone." Kellen nodded thoughtfully. Indeed, if we can navigate these waters carefully, there is potential for a lasting alliance. A new era of cooperation. Months passed as both civilizations worked diligently toward building bridges rather than walls. The Galactic Council began to shift its focus from military dominance toward collaboration and innovation, a change that resonated throughout its member species. As news of this unprecedented alliance spread across galaxies far and wide, many civilizations began reevaluating their own relationships with humanity. Some sought partnerships while others remained wary, unsure how best to navigate this new landscape where humans wielded power unlike any seen before. Elder Therak stood before an assembly of council members once again, this time filled with optimism rather than fear as he addressed them about their ongoing efforts toward cooperation with humanity. "We have entered into an era marked by understanding rather than hostility," he declared passionately. "Let us embrace this opportunity to learn from one another, to grow together as allies rather than adversaries." Applause erupted throughout the chamber as members recognized how far they had come since first encountering humanity's supernova fleet. A journey filled with uncertainty, but ultimately leading toward unity forged through respect. The legacy of change. As time went on and alliances flourished across galaxies once divided by mistrust, the legacy left behind by that fateful encounter transformed not only relationships between species, but also perceptions about what it meant to coexist within an ever-expanding universe filled with diverse cultures and ideas, waiting patiently beneath surface ready to emerge whenever called upon next time around. In retrospect, it became clear, when humans revealed their Supernova-Class ships, the galaxy changed forever, not merely due to technological advancements, but because they challenged every civilization's understanding of power itself. And so began an era defined by collaboration over conflict, a testament proving even amidst uncertainty hope could flourish when understanding bridged gaps, once thought insurmountable.